This is July 6th, 2022. A couple of days ago, there was a disturbing and touching presentation in the paper of a 100-year-old World War II veteran who used the occasion of being revered in the media to cry a lot about the lost cause in the United States. My father was a World War II veteran, and before I lost my hearing, I used to enjoy hearing him talk. He had a lot of gusto, he had a lot of historical wherewithal. He was a smart, intelligent man. He was involved in public education by choice. He turned down a number of more prestigious positions. And of course, those who disagreed with him, who saw self advancement as more important than public service, turned on him, and I suffered terribly. But he was at Teachers College with Eisenhower. He was a lieutenant on the same ship in the Navy, the CVL 30, as George Bush Sr. in World War II. So he knew Bush and Eisenhower as a colleague of Eisenhower's at Teachers College. And he turned down the presidency of the University of Georgia when they refused to integrate. And although he was resented by the Pittsburgh NAACP as an outsider, he became chair of philosophy of education at the University of Pittsburgh with an office in the Cathedral of Learning, largely from his commitment to human and civil rights in the 40s and 50s. So my own heritage also includes my grandfather, who was self educated. He was a copy editor at the St. Louis Post Dispatch when he retired, but he had been at the Miami Herald, the Wichita Herald. And he was a very close friend of the author Black Elk Speaks. My grandmother and my grandfather would spend weekends at his place, and they were close personal friends. They were voted by council distinguished citizens of Poplar Bluff, Missouri. I myself went to the Pennsylvania Governor's School for the Arts for my poetry. Have appeared in such things as Chinook Coupon Book, Cine's Film Quarterly, Asian Cult Cinema. I have been banned again by Seattle Central Community College despite being a straight A student because they don't want um, other students to hear my views. They're afraid of what will happen if people realize that um, I have my own narrative about what's going on. I've corresponded. I have a autograph Clint Eastwood here. I corresponded with Martha Gellhorn, who Ernest Hemingway dedicated For Whom the Bell Tolls to, Eugene Sledge, Peter Gabriel. There's a lot of dickering going on in Seattle in the post office about who owns what they say is a treasured postcard that was written to me by Robert Fripp. And they've justified as a sort of informal servitude to master storyline from another script written by Israelis with overtones of Hollywood magic. In other words, I was scripted into a very cunning play that the power structure is putting on. All of which is part of the loss that people who are associated with the great generation who won World War II feel looking at contemporary society. My favorite book is A Time for Greatness by Herbert Agar. As you can see, there was an armed services edition of this very excellent book by the author of the Southern Review in World War II. And "Time for Greatness" was used by JFK for his campaign slogan, obviously referring to this wonderful book. Well, in Japanese tradition, when somebody is conspicuous for achievement, um, lesser lights angle towards them to try to challenge them. The Samurai trilogy, film trilogy, is about this very thing. Ichiro likes to say there's a saying, that which sticks up gets hammered down. So what we see is, after JFK was hammered down, the Beatles put their agency on such middle American pastimes as Petticoat Junction, announcing that they were the most popular thing in America. That was very important to them. And the way the Jewish community surrounded me, for the authors of this postcard and this script, um, preyed upon domestic home wrecking by them, the heartache that I felt being targeted and domestically home wrecked, outflanked such things as were trivialized by the University of Pittsburgh Law School, like my being tortured, deafened, and a nerve agent being implanted in me, my being kidnapped, subjected to outrageous cruelties, which the power structure led by a pawnbroker named Joel Kaplan with George Bush Jr. and their lackey Obama put together as a special consideration, where of special super production in folkways art, in Pittsburgh provincial norms of Bertolt Brecht's Man is Man. They used me both as their Seuss, who was the Jew who was strung up by the Nazis in the famous anti-Semitic film, while he squealed, let me live, I want to live," and also Adolf Eichmann being put on his trial for life, being put on trial for his life as a result of being an accused war criminal. I was both a children's toy that was hiding a bomb and a mined dog, and yet they said some depicted me as the counterfeit of an unborn child. They subjected me to the statutory rape of a little boy. The women involved were scriptwriters. They had malice. They were premeditated, uh, terrifying criminals, even though they were my age, or even for strategic reasons, a little bit younger. And it involved the stage management of very powerful underworld figures in Hollywood, George Romero and Yoko Ono, while their scholars from Harvard, like Thos Gordon, said it's an indication of how Russia felt, because the peasants were made to scorn the Tsarina's son because he was consumptive, and he was sheltered and pampered. So they came collecting for a World War II debt known as Hiroshima, and hammered down JFK and targeted Little Boy. And among the things that helped them outflank World War II veterans was not just that the master narrative of our society, the ability to critique honestly, was hammered down with JFK, and of course his friendship with Goldwater, who also believed, as Kennedy did, that prosperity without dignity was meaningless. They scuttled that narrative in favor of war in Vietnam and greed, psychopathic arms race greed. So you had a situation where the strangers newspaper, The Leftist, notoriously henpecking for status, could get giggles in tormenting the idea of America being prosperous because of our dignity and helping these insane psychopathic Israelis working with Yoko Ono to backstab our World War II veterans. And what we see January 4th, a few days ago, when Robert Crimo shot up a town, is the fulfillment of the strategic wing of this nightmare. It happened in Uvalde too, and the tongue twisting invested in choosing places like Uvalde and names like Crimo come from the King Crimson psychopath who was behind I, Siciliani Vespers when Midori Goto appeared at Heinz Hall. I believe it was after Heinz had been done in. They're playing a war game, and they're using me by building an alien prison around me from the outer limits and using me secretively so that Yoko Ono can recoup her money lost because John Lennon stepped out in this adventure. They use the symbol of a C and a Star of David for the pornographic genocide symbol. The statutory rape of a little boy. It has a C and a Star of David, meaning you must die. They poisoned me in the mouth. They said things to me like, if you try to help black people, they will only turn on you. But it's much worse than that. After 12 years of good conduct at Sound Mental Health, and then straight A's, they poisoned me in the mouth. This is the vacuum that exists. People like my father in retirement drove school buses trying to address this vacuum. But people have filters on. They won't listen to anything. They refuse, for example, at Tacoma Community College to attend a class by a dignified teacher on the 60s. The reason for that is they have all chosen to believe that there was something fitting about the AIDS attack. And to show anything about the 60s and how it actually was executed and what was lost in America and the actual heart of the matter, which is a revenge attack by the criminally insane and British fascism, which includes John Lennon and Paul McCartney, attacking my father as the wayward samurai would attack the great samurai. It's a principle of abandonment of the past that doesn't want to know. It was like when they showed the film on TV about the Holocaust in Germany. Many young German kids said, "What is this?" They didn't know. They didn't want to be woken up about what happened. Of course, I knew because I was tortured in a Jewish Holocaust survivor community as a child. And beyond the showing of the Holocaust on TV in Germany, the made-for-television melodrama was considerably sanitized for the audience. We have a first family who have survived a society where attacks on first family have been normalized. Touting around the word Goya, which is an artist from Spain who delved on the disasters of war as though they were normal. And they've hotwired the intellectual system into a meaningless master narrative. And when you look at my research and you see that Reagan was involved in the Axis planning for revenge, and that Jackie Kennedy is holding something very suspicious in the limousine, you realize that the reason why Shifty and his intelligence system at UW Dialectical was able to get off free smacks for Yoko Ono is because the legacy of what the Kennedy family is trying to hide about the home record domestic tactic of the Beatles in England is so great that it's more important to them that it be kept secret than even the life of Circe Kennedy or the two more Kennedys that were given as silence right to Shifty and UW Dialectical, who just killed them in the master system that the king criminal of England has deployed. With they're going to ignore Yuval Day translates into stick around, watch. They're going to ignore the Cremo looks like Creo and Cremzo, which was the nickname of the king criminal and his apparatus. And you notice one of the things that has happened is that the Green Party in Germany, who rubber stamped my father's murder in the end, it was put on his obituary by the um, assassins who were talking about injecting parochial values, right? Writing about the persona, meaning me, being subjected to successive degradations of the X motive, which translates as attack prostitutes. And they got the help of the NAACP in using attack prostitutes because Seattle is licky chops and dickering about who owns the postcard written by the master criminal in the script. Well, the Green Party, who sold themselves as being pacifists all through the AIDS attack, have now turned and become super militarized. Ukraine was their excuse. NATO has dismantled American intelligence and hotwired in for Germany and Russia in a strategic alliance that's only developing now. So what we see is the old plan of Cecil Rhodes to conquer America. And they got in real good with Pittsburgh, whose name is as black as Auschwitz.